All right, everybody, welcome to Her the Nerds. There's nothing to adjust on your computer or your podcasting device. This is Rob, not Keith, but we do have Keith with us. This is the Bacta podcast, and we are here to talk about the last episode, part 6 of Obi-Wan. And Keith is joining us remotely. Keith, are you with us? Are we coming through?
Should be around here somewhere.
Yes, I feel like a news reporter, some crazy storm. However, the crazy storm is just another country at 2 a.m. So happy to be here. Thanks for holding down the fort, fellas.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course we've got Cam with us as well, who's been along for the journey. Cam, how you doing?
I'm very good, and I'm waiting to talk about this episode because a lot happened.
We got a lot to cover. I think this might have even been the longest episode of the series. Is that right? Does anybody can anybody corroborate that? A 53-minute runtime?
I can't corroborate it, but if you say it is, I'll agree with you.
Fair enough. I'll take it. Always agree with me. That's the key to my heart. But a lot to cover. I will jump into the recap so we can get right to it and before we do that, actually, as always, we have some more Star Wars accoutrements to
Rob, it looks like you got some new things.
I did. I'm gonna
yeah.
I'll be honest. I splurged a bit on a recent trip to the Mouse House. So I got these 2 holocrons, of course, one Jedi, one Sith, and they are pretty neat. I had done the lightsaber building experience at other times, and they come with their own kyber crystals now. These holocrons are pretty cool. Like, they activate. I won't turn them on now because it'll be a bit of an audio mess, but they talk. They have like a bunch of different phrases they run through. What's fun is the Jedi holocron, the default messages that it puts out is the Obi-Wan warning to the Jedi, like that the order has fallen and, stay away from the Jedi temple and, remain hiding. So that's pretty fun. But if you take your kyber crystal or that you either got from the lightsaber building experience, or you can of course purchase those separately, they wouldn't rob you of that opportunity. You can put those in there and you'll get different messages from different Jedi depending on the color of the crystal. So
which one do you listen to the most?
I tend to listen to, and I played with them a bit, but the one that I find more fun is the Jedi holocron because depending on the color of the crystal, you get different Jedi talking to you versus when you put it in the Sith holocron, it's a different set of Palpatine quotes, it seems to be every time. Mm-hmm. I think it's Darth Bane that talks to you, voiced by Mark Hamill. When you first turn it on, the guy who established the rule of 2. But if you put a crystal in there, it seems to be different stuff from Palpatine, which makes sense. He's
he kind of took over a lot of the Sith stuff.
A bit of a singular guy.
Yeah. And now it's just me, guys. It's just me.
Yeah, he does not share power. But then also on top of that, I got this Disney exclusive pop figure from the concept art series of the different Star Wars characters. This is the concept art of Vader. I believe this is the Ralph McQuarrie.
I was gonna say, it definitely looks like a Ralph McQuarrie helmet.
It's a bit more angular, kind of looks like the gray alien eyes, a bit more drawn back, and he's even got a blue lightsaber there. So very early stuff. And the last thing I had to splurge on, it was a bit silly, but I couldn't help myself. I got the Jedi shoulder pauldron. Yes. So I can represent the Republic.
Ready to fight in the Clone Wars.
Ready to charge into the breach once again. And of course, they there's plenty more. Yeah, I can always go back and find more stuff to buy because they're good at the toys. They're good at the marketing, and they make it a lot of fun. And Disney does a great job.
I feel like
the Star Wars land.
I feel like Rob just wants the show to keep going so that he can continue to go and buy
more excuses.
toys.
He's like, why am I buying this?
I really wish you wouldn't put me on blast like that right in front of everybody, because it's absolutely true. This is absolutely something I'd been looking at, and now I'm like, well, now I have the perfect excuse. I mean, what else am I going to bring into the studio if I don't bring in new stuff? So that's what we have on screen. If you guys are just listening to it, tune in to the YouTube version. Take a look there. We'll have these set up there on the main little center portion, as you'll see, and give them a look. But yeah, with that, I mean, we can jump into the episode. I've got a bit of a recap for you guys to catch everybody up. But of course, that means there are spoilers ahead. So We're going to play the messaging for you here, and after that, it is no longer safe waters. You will have to be able to contend with the spoilers. So, Obi-Wan, if you could give that message a spin.
This message is a warning and a reminder for any and all listeners or watchers of the Bacta podcast. Spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead.
Okay.
You've
All
been
right.
warned.
You've been warned.
You be warned.
All right, so here we go. Episode 6, Part 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. We open up on Reva, having returned to Tatooine very quickly, record time, I think. She's asking around town for Owen, luckily. Some people she roughed up doing it are his friends, so they let Owen know to keep an eye out. He returns to Beru and to let her know that they're coming for Luke, and instead of running, she wants to go out guns blazing, fighting for their home and their child. And they tell Luke, hey, listen, Tusken Raiders are nearby, raiding nearby farms, just hide out and run if things get dicey. Meanwhile, the path is on the run from Vader's Star Destroyer, but Obi-Wan knows they can't run for long, so he decides to go confront Vader himself. After a heart-to-heart with Leia, convincing her it's the only way, Obi-Wan gives her Tala's blaster holster while she slips Lola in his pocket to keep him company in his fight. Vader takes Obi-Wan's bait, and the two meet alone on the surface of Jabeam. After a short exchange of words, Obi-Wan takes his classic lightsaber stance, and the two engage in what is truly their rematch fight. Obi-Wan is in much better fighting shape, and at this point, or he's in much better shape at this point, but Vader's a well-oiled machine at this point, for lack of a better term, and he wins round one and drives Obi-Wan into the planet itself with the Force and buries him in rubble. On the Lars homestead, Reva shows up in the dead of night. After fighting her way through Owen and Beru's blaster fire, she chases Luke into the desert night and corners him in a canyon. Back on Jabeam, Obi-Wan thinks of Luke and Leia in the future, and he fights that he's fighting for, and he pushes the rubble off of himself. He chases Vader down for round 2, and this time overwhelms him. Obi-Wan pummels him with boulders and slashes his breathing apparatus and mask, revealing the scarred Anakin below. Overcome, Obi-Wan stops and apologizes to him for failing him, but all that's left of his old friend is Vader, who only continues to threaten and menace even as he struggles to breathe. With that, Obi-Wan realizes Anakin is gone, and he leaves Vader there, screaming after him as he walks away. Back with Luke, he falls down trying to scramble away from Reva, and though she has the opportunity to kill him, she cannot bring herself to do it, seeing herself in this young, Force-sensitive boy. Obi-Wan arrives on Tatooine just as Reva brings Luke back to his family. She breaks down to him and he tells her, hey, shocker, being like Vader isn't necessarily a good thing, and she decides to hang up her Inquisitor cloak for good. Vader, with the new suit on, vows to the Emperor that he'll finish Obi-Wan, but his master tells him his fixation makes him weak, and they have bigger fish to fry, so for now, Vader agrees. Leia, also happily returned to her family, gets one last visit from Obi-Wan on Alderaan as he returns Lola to her, and before he leaves, he tells her that, though he wishes he could say more, that she carries on the best parts of both of her parents. On his way out, he tells Bail, listen, hey, if there's any trouble that comes your way again, you know where to find me. Returning to Tatooine, Obi-Wan packs up his humble cave to search for a new home. He stops by to see Owen and promises to keep his distance. Owen does thank him for his help and offers to let him meet Luke and maybe even give him the toy T-16 that he's been carrying around, and we finally get our hello there. From there, Obi-Wan looks for a new place to call home. And as he searches, he finds Qui-Gon's ghost waiting for him. Though he's pleased to see his old master, he asks where he's been, and Qui-Gon tells him, hey, when you only saw one set of footprints in the sand, that was when I was carrying you. Still, he has much to teach his old student, and the two head off into the binary sunset, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, comes to a close.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, yeah, gentlemen, thoughts on the episode? Keith, lead us off, man. What'd you think?
The thing I have in my notes here, and number one is I got everything I wanted for Christmas. I thought I had it had just kind of a bit of everything that I was craving, and there were some things that I had predicted and much that I didn't. Watching this, I was a little nervous to get into it, to be honest. I was like, how do you wrap up this kind of series and do it well, especially coming off of probably one of if not the best episode of the series.
Yeah.
And they somehow topped it. I mean, there were a couple things that I was a little, iffy on, but at the end of the day, there were the moments that mattered really hit home, and they hit all the right points, including some of the best saved kind of moments until the end. I mean, for me, Hello There is just, I almost cried. I was just like, this is what we come here for.
Mm-hmm.
And even his lightsaber stance, the whole thing, it was like they saved the best parts for last, which I think is really hard to do in a show like this. And so I was really
either.
Yeah, no, it was very earned. It was very poignant. It was useful. It wasn't just put in there for a hey, look at this, remember this thing we did.
Right.
And I love that.
Yeah. Cam, what about you?
I mean, this was a tearjerker for me.
Yeah.
Like that scene when Obi-Wan is apologizing to Anakin, being like, "I'm sorry for having to do this." That was gut wrenching. Like,
I was a mess.
And then
and
then for Vader to flip on that and be like, "Who are you talking to? Anakin's dead. I killed him, and now I'm going to destroy you."
Yeah.
That's just like, imagine like your best friend just being completely gone.
Yeah.
That's a intense scene, and I was here for it though. Like that's the best part of Star Wars though, is those moments that make you feel for the characters and what's happening. And then just throughout the whole episode, like he was saying, just had so many homages to the rest of the series that were done really well though. Like there's ways you can do it that's like bad. They did it like with the stance of Obi-Wan when he's about to fight Vader, the hello there at the end, just the small little pieces that were just really made this feel like what makes me love Star Wars. That's what very much this episode gave to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. Keith, I absolutely understood and understand the nerves that you had going into it. I was in a similar place where I was just like, can they keep this same momentum up, especially with some of the worries I know we had coming out of that fifth episode, which I know we all enjoyed and all felt very, was a very strong episode. But, things can go up, things can go down. I think Disney Plus in general has had some challenges in closing out their series. And, even, I mean, in a lot of modern series, it feels like the penultimate episode seems to be the big one. And then the finale always feels a little bit like, okay, that was all right. But I really feel like they absolutely did save the best for last here. And overall, just really, really great moments. Of course, if there's nits to pick, they are there to find. And, I have a few, but overall, like I very much enjoyed this episode. I thought they really stuck the landing on the show. And I think overall, this series, while some episodes were a little bit weaker in my opinion, overall the series to me was a success. And I think they did really good work with it.
I fully agree with that. It was definitely a success.
Yeah.
I wanted to say also, like I think one thing that maybe we don't appreciate as much on the viewer end is that on a show like this, there's these big moments that would be in any other show really just huge, like and we would know we wouldn't know what was going to happen, like when Riva comes out with Luke. You like there's if you don't know what's happening or what's happening on the show, like, or the Star Wars universe, like that would be a big like, oh my gosh, is he dead? But we all know the ending of all these moments, and we know that Obi-Wan doesn't die, we know that Vader doesn't die. And so the fact that they're able to still make us get excited or nervous, or
I was worried for Obi-Wan,
heartwarmed or upset. It's so difficult to pull off, and to be able to still have those moments when everyone knows what the answer to the question is at the end of the day, must be amazing. Like, can you imagine like watching this as a kid and not knowing, like now having like no spoilers?
Yeah, I mean,
like I envy those kids.
Yeah,
that's one of those things that I always think about. When hopefully someday I have kids of my own and I'm able to share Star Wars with them. Like,
are you gonna make them watch it?
Right.
Episode 1 through.
Do you watch release order or chronological order?
Man, I will say what this show actually did is I was just thinking about as we're talking about it. It makes me appreciate Obi-Wan's character and like his death in episode 4 that much more impactful. Like, I'm thinking about all this now new Obi-Wan content we get to see and his participation.
Yeah,
right. But his ultimate sacrifice in episode 4 now has so much more weight to it after seeing everything that we've seen now.
Yeah, I did see a meme that was just like, this is my favorite Star Wars trilogy, and it was the posters for Revenge of the Sith, then Obi-Wan, and then A New Hope. And it's like, I mean, I guess there is a bit of an arc there for sure. Yeah, I mean, we obviously there were some characters we were familiar with having some really cool moments, and some characters that are new that had some interesting moments. And some maybe we'll see again, some maybe we won't. I mean, Keith, what did you think about you brought up Riva. What did you think about the Riva story? How did that all come together for you? And is this a character you think you'd want to see more of?
You know, I'm not really sure about her storyline wrapping up like that. It didn't feel like as satisfying as I would hope it. Like it just I was hoping. I mean, so we talked about it last week on the show, our kind of hopes and dreams. Like I kind of laid out this prediction of Qui-Gon coming into the thick of it, and I almost wish that there had been a moment of Obi-Wan like proving it somehow by Qui-Gon stepping in and maybe being a voice of guidance, or like her letting it go just felt like a little bit of a, like, I don't want to say soft landing for her, but I'm glad that there was something. It felt like we needed one more move in that storyline. I don't know quite what it is, but I wish we had given her something. It's hard too, because like she doesn't exist in the rest of the universe, so it's like you should not have anywhere specifically to go. And she was such a titular character, but she was such a important character throughout the series, and maybe that was designed to kind of hide the Vader of it all until the end. But I was looking for more from her story, like plot wise. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that one more move, I wish that we had spent maybe a little bit more time, and this kind of comes back to some of my issues with the fourth episode.
I was going to say, that was the opportunity to give us more Reva, that backstory and that exposition.
It didn't necessarily need to be a flashback, and I know obviously exposition dumps can be a bit tricky, but I would have liked to have heard a bit more of what her journey was before she got to
like how the
Inquisitors. And I agree with you, Keith. Maybe that would tip the hand on Vader a little early and her ultimate goal for revenge there. But I mean, ultimately, I am glad that she lived through it, because even as I think the first moment I actually was like, oh, you know what? I think I actually care about this character was when she's on the ground and Vader is standing over her and he's about to run her through for what is the second time in her life. And I'm like, what an absolute miserable journey for this poor woman, like to have been a young girl on that terrible night, live through all that challenge, and then also through having to be
the very thing that you hate,
become the thing that you hate, and then for her to just be killed by Vader would have been like, oh god, that would, I mean, even for Star Wars, which can sometimes get dark, that would have felt very dark and bleak. And so for her to at least come back around in some way, and not truly fall to that darkness, and I know some people had some issues with, well, she stood by and watched a lot of these things happen. I think there's a difference between standing by and then having to do it yourself. But I think at the end of the day, she is somebody that was struggling to find her way back to the light, and I'm glad that she did, and I hope she goes off to just live in peace. And I personally don't need to see her come back. That's not because I didn't like her character, but I don't. If anything, like I just want her to go be a farmer somewhere on a nice planet.
You want to think of the happy ending in that sense. Like I think there was, you could see from her character there was an understanding that like what she had done is like irredeemable. So now she just kind of has to go and just like not be around people, and based on what she did.
She's got to go, slice up some meat on another carcass for a couple decades and see how that goes.
Right. Go find some
big slice of humble pie.
Go slice some manta ray in the desert for a while, Riva, and see what that does for your humble pie.
Clears your mind.
Then, of course, another new character we spent some time with was Roken, O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character, the leader of the Path. It seemed to me that we are probably going to see more of this character based on the goodbye he and Obi-Wan had, and Obi-Wan kind of saying like, hey, there's not too many leaders out there. Cam, what's your takeaway from that, and what'd you think of Roken, and is that somebody you're looking forward to seeing again?
I really liked his character because he stayed kind of that classic side character rebel kind of general leader that like I've always liked kind of some of the side secondary characters, because they always seemed like this is what makes up the body of like the rebellion in that,
right.
And he really, I think, embodied that like hope. Like he's got that hopeful aspect. It's like we can still win, like there's still hope here, and that's kind of what he has to be, and that's kind of what Obi-Wan tells him that he has to be, is people need leaders. I can't do it but you have to. And I'm looking forward to seeing him reappear in more stuff. And if he's in Andor, like, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Keith, what about you?
I think you have to have, with this sort of series, as kind of elliptical as it is, you kind of have to have somebody who carries the thread to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was a really great way to do it, in that we didn't spend too much time with him, but when we see him, we're going to kind of know his deal a little bit. And I the more I saw him on screen, actually, the more I liked him, as performance wise and like who he is.
I agree with that.
And it felt like he did grow into the role, as opposed to just kind of like an established character right off the bat. Like, it was a little bit of a rocky start, I'm not gonna lie.
Yep.
But the moment of him kind of giving it to Obi-Wan, being like, dude, you don't have to go, this is like, why are you going, was felt like actually really legit. And he kind of I think that was an interesting scene too, where everyone got kind of mad, like, Obi-Wan, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you going? It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Was kind of great, because I feel like that's how I would feel if like this amazing Jedi was just kind of like, yeah, you guys seem kind of screwed, so I'm gonna go. Like, obviously they don't really mean that, but I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why they would feel that way. Yeah, it's a character too that, I mean, generally I liked. It's somebody that I kind of wish we got a little bit more from, especially, and I think we did here and there as the show went on. Especially early on, we kind of got his backstory, about his wife having, been Force sensitive and then, found and captured by the Inquisitors. And so certainly he's got the motivation to fight for the rebellion. He seems like very motivated to be out there, and I could absolutely see him popping back up again in a show like Andor or something, or who knows if we'll see more of this character or even more of the show. But I'd be down to see him again. I do wish that he was another character that I kind of wanted to see more of, and I was a little surprised that he wasn't one of the guys in the the snow speeders, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But I like Cam was you were saying. I think they're definitely trying to establish rebel leaders leading up to Andor. I think they classically try to put it as like, oh, there's the Mon Mothma faction versus the Saw Gerrera faction, and
now we've got
now
Roken's faction.
Now we've got Roken in the Path and their connection to the Jedi, which also, I mean, makes sense to me because, the rebellion in all of their pre-mission meetings close them with "Maybe the Force be with you," and that was something to me. I was always just like, oh, I kind of wonder where that comes from, and if the rebellion in some part has its origins in this like underground railroad for Jedi. I think that makes a lot of sense that they would, be believers and want to help from the Force because they need it. They need help from somewhere.
I think that was part of the reason they were so bummed that Obi-Wan was doing what he was doing, because he was like, well, the only reason we got off the planet was because of you, and now you're going to leave us to most likely die. Like, they were expecting him to die and not come back from Vader. I mean, that was...
Yeah. I mean, that definitely was a moment of just like, you're going to have to trust me that I know this guy wants me more than anything. And I know this moment has been memed a lot, but even, Vader and the Grand Inquisitor standing side by side, and he's just like, no, we got to go for Obi-Wan. And like, you can just see the Grand Inquisitor like sucking his teeth in the background, just like in soft focus, like, okay, and you just know that in 5 years he's going to be dealing with some very annoying rebel cells. All this comes down to Vader's choice here to chase after Obi-Wan. So the Grand Inquisitor has a lot of misery on the way because of this.
Yeah, I was going to say there were a couple moments, and I think that's the trap of, again, playing in a certain sandbox, because your characters can't can't collect $500 on certain character points, and like the same thing goes for Obi-Wan. Like he can't, like, if he had killed Vader on that planet, like the amount of lives that he would have saved, like there's just a level of like, are you kidding me? But then of course we wouldn't have any of Star Wars.
No.
So,
Right.
So it's like, you understand, but you also go,
It's also it's classic. It plays into Vader's character though, and that's the thing. I think the reason why a lot of these things work is that like that's a move that Anakin and Vader being at the level he is, and also his like he's been trying to get Obi-Wan for now. He knows he's alive and is trying to get him, and now it's like the last chance that he can like face him. And Obi-Wan's kind of luring out there. He's kind of like, well, I'm gonna take this chance because that's who Anakin is. He's not thinking about the greater plan. He's like, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And that's part of Anakin's selfishness, is that he wants the world to be the way, or the galaxy to be the way he wants it to be. So that's why he's like, I mean, fuck all these like Imperials. I want Obi-Wan now.
Yeah, and I'm sure Vader, in a way, I mean, he is arrogant, and he probably thinks to himself, and I think this harkened back to even the Episode 3 moment where he kind of let Obi-Wan go after dragging him through the fire. My read on that was always just like, I'll get him later. Like, they can only run so far. I'm Darth Vader. He's been stacking up W's for 10 years straight at this point. Like, that's the thing about this Vader, is he hasn't really known loss at all. Like, as far as like as far as the battlefield, like, this guy has just been undefeated. Crazily so. So I think he's definitely full of his powers at that point. Just like, okay, they get away, and then what? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Flash forward to the Death Star blowing up,
Literally.
and he's getting jettisoned off into space. But to talk about before we get into the big stuff, I did want to talk about a couple other characters that are established in Star Wars that I think got a little bit of shine in the series, and especially in this episode. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed this for them. I thought it was really great.
Again, it made me appreciate their characters more. And then in episode 4, and I'm like, well, damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you roll that clip of Rob going, just,
It did.
Luke
It
just
did.
squeezed them.
It twisted the knife in that, sore spot for me a little bit. I got to be honest, because, yeah, you see that. I mean, for obviously reasons, they are there to protect their home, and they're stand-up people, in Beru just being like, oh, I'm not going out without a fight, and
I
tossing out
appreciated
guns was pretty crazy. But even for that moment, I think my favorite moment with them, even in the entire series, is when Reva says, like, you fight for him like he's your own, and Owen's saying, like, he is my own, and that they raised him like their son.
Well, and there is a connection. Like, it may not be directly blood related, but like his Klieg was he his father?
Oh, yeah, I believe so.
And then Owen would have been Anakin's stepbrother.
Yes.
So while it may not be a blood relation, there is still that connection to Anakin's family and having met him in that situation.
Right. Absolutely.
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Rob. I think there's something to be said, like, as his parents, like, you have to give them credit for how, like, Luke was raised, and obviously his values. You know, he is who he is because of these people, for better or for not, just because of who his father and his mother are. And it's a good little homage to them and what they've been able to do for him. And I love the recreation of those sets also. I think it was really spot on, and you felt like you were still where you are in episode 4, and it definitely made me want to watch episode 4 again.
Yeah.
Which actually is a perfect segue into the Return of the Jedi moments that we had in this show, which I thought were plentiful.
Sure.
Obviously the Force Ghost showing up is kind of my number one. What else did you guys notice as far as parallels go for Return of the Jedi?
The Emperor was in it. He may have been a hologram, but he was definitely there, and I appreciated the cameo. I like Ian McDiarmid's performance. I mean, he's a fantastic actor, and like having the Emperor being that continuous manipulator for Anakin, being like, well, no, you're weak if you go after Obi-Wan, you're mine. And then he's basically like, you know what, I am yours.
Yeah, I thought that was a very astute observation by the Emperor, to be like, anytime Vader gets close to what he used to be close to as Anakin, it seems to drag him back towards the light, and there is that conflict still within him, and obviously that comes back up with Luke, even in when Vader discovers that Luke is his son, and that's always one of the things I enjoyed so much about watching Empire Strikes Back, and seeing like, okay, in episode 4, like, Vader is this just like, he's a villain, like, remorseless, he's just doing what he has to do, and it's like sweet in this sick and twisted way, the ways that he tries to bring Luke over to his side, and that, like, Vader at this point, like, in Empire Strikes Back, has killed anybody that has gotten in his way ever. And then he gets on the phone with the Emperor, and he's just like, Emperor's like, hey, there's this Skywalker guy, he can't become a Jedi. And Vader's first thing is just like, well, what if we turned him? We could bring him over, and then maybe he could be a powerful ally. And he's just like, okay, sure, let's try this out.
Can it be done?
Yeah. So I think that and that plays into the conflict between the Vader side and the Anakin side of that character, which obviously they touch on a lot in this episode. But one other thing before we move on from the Owen and Beru of it all, this whole sequence between them and Reva, to me, really harkened back to a Legends storyline that I believe was originally a comic that kind of got adapted a little bit differently in Rebels.
Is it the Darth Maul situation?
Yes.
Yes, it
so
was a comic. Yep.
there was a comic where Darth Maul, it turns out, had survived on Naboo from their duel. This is before this was established on Clone Wars that he had survived, and he had the big spider leg thing, and he had been telling Obi-Wan that, I've been hunting you and just barely missing you at every single turn, and now I've finally tracked you down to Tatooine, and he kidnaps Luke as bait to draw Obi-Wan out to have one more duel. And obviously they did adapt this a bit for Rebels with the episode Twin Suns, which is fantastic, and I cannot recommend it enough. Obviously it goes a little bit differently than it does in the comics, and the story ends intense and like wild.
Should I spoil it?
I mean, this is one of those, like, if you don't want this spoiled, fast forward 30 seconds, but Cam, hit him with it.
Owen shoots him in the head.
Shoots Maul in the head.
You get Darth Maul brains everywhere. Like, you see it.
It's intense. So obviously things go a bit differently both in this adaptation on Obi-Wan Kenobi with Reva and in the Twin Suns adaptation on Rebels. But that particular Legends comic story has been played with and adapted and brought into the story multiple times. But yeah, so I mean, listen, there's a big moment we haven't really touched on yet in its entirety, and that's the rematch of the century as they build it coming into this episode. The rematch between Obi-Wan and Vader on Jabim. I'll just say, like, this is, to me, was, I mean, not only the best part of the series, but overall, I would say, one of my maybe favorite Star Wars moments, period. What did you guys think?
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with Rob. I would agree with you right there. It definitely is up there with my favorite moments. I loved the it was almost like Anakin versus Obi-Wan from episode 3, but like 2.0 in the sense that, like, both of them are now, like, Obi-Wan's older but also wiser. Anakin's older and now more powerful and more of a machine. I loved their use of the Force. This was kind of the first, I guess not the first, but we had a good show of, like, how powerful the Force can be, I think, in this duel. Yeah. Because, like, I mean, they were throwing each other around. They were throwing the landscape at each other. Yeah. Like, they were definitely, what would you say? They were definitely showing off their Force abilities in this. And both of them are great duelists. I loved the different camera angles we got from this. It felt very intense. Like, I was worried for Obi-Wan because, like, yes, I knew he was going to live, but I was like, he's going to make it, but how is he going to make it out of this? Yeah. Yeah. What condition is he making out? Also, I loved the little, they quoted episode 3 at the beginning of the fight. He's like, I think the line is, I'll do what I must. Yes. And then Darth Vader says, you will try. And then I loved the part at the end when Vader actually has the high ground. He didn't say it. I was expecting him to say it.
I did think about that.
I was thinking he was going to.
Yeah.
Kind of glad he didn't, but it was present that Vader was like, definitely like, this is what this is what kind of what Obi-Wan felt like. Not directly, but it's kind of that, like, now I've won the battle and you can't get out.
Right. Keith, what about you? What are your takeaways from this duel on Jabim?
Yeah, there were a lot of things. I mean, I think the way it was shot was really unlike any other lightsaber battle we've had. And I think they did a really good job of cutting it and using angles so that you eliminate the kind of clunkiness that can arise with the Vader fight, where you have him kind of moving slower. And so they kept up the speed and intensity and got those really great moments and really interesting fighting styles. You felt like you were, again, in episode 3, but it was something that very much changed between the two of them. They were really trying to end each other. I liked the kind of part 1 and part 2 of it all, that it was kind of segmented like that. And the editing sequence, or the sequence in which you kind of Obi-Wan like regains his strength, I think was really great. And this is the Obi-Wan we knew was in the tank the whole time, and for him to actually be able to like put the car in gear and go for it was really awesome. There were a couple of moments where I'm like, oh, it would have been really cool if they did that. Like I kind of wanted Vader to throw his lightsaber. I wanted to get like something cool like that in there, or maybe a little bit different power we haven't seen before. But that's just me being like greedy at the end of the day. The big heartfelt moments really kind of sunk in the best way. And again, another episode 6 reference, we see the helmet come off.
Yep.
And when you see them make eye contact and you see Hayden Christensen through all of that gear and the wheezing and the pain, and you're just like, you get to feel sorry for him, like you do in episode 6, where you're just like this poor thing and the amount that he's going through. And you see this is just overall with this episode. Yeah. But can we just give like a round of applause to you and McGregor for bringing it home? I mean, it was like every moment that needed to be real and raw on this episode, he just like knocked out of the park times 100. It was he just put him in frame, and there was never a doubt in my mind that this was Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this was exactly what he would be feeling in this moment. And all you had to do is look at his face, which is just sign of a truly incredible actor. So hats off.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. I thought, the use of the Force powers especially, I thought was very creative. We didn't necessarily see anything entirely new, I guess, as far as like how the Force is used, but I just enjoyed them even like tripping each other up with rocks.
Showing it off was great.
Splitting the earth open, or even Obi-Wan's like barrage of boulders was really cool. And seeing Obi-Wan adjusting in that second round, and Vader kind of pulling out. I even noticed like Vader using tricks that he used on Reva that she didn't know what to do with, and Obi-Wan could adapt and just like, okay, I taught him most of what he knows. I can kind of figure this out. And I it showed the adaptability of Obi-Wan to, even though he's not as powerful, he always figures out a way and outthinks his opponent.
He learned a lot from that fight with Grievous, it sounds like.
Yes.
He's a resourceful. Obi-Wan will fight dirty if he needs to.
If he needs to, absolutely. But no, in the moment between, I struggle to call him Vader in that moment, between Anakin and Obi-Wan, when the helmet is split open. I'm a sucker. Anytime, Vader gets his helmet split open and you can see the Anakin underneath, I'm a total sucker for that. Shout out to Twilight of the Apprentice episode on Rebels. Watch Rebels, guys. It's really good. It's really good. But that moment between them and Ewan McGregor's performance and Hayden Christensen's performance was very intense.
And I loved the change, the voice modulation they had. He would like kind of started as Anakin, but then it would change to Vader again, and then back was just like very good. The sound design was so good in this.
Sorry, go ahead, Keith.
I was going to say that there's a real sense of artistry in that moment where you are mixing Anakin and James Earl Jones' voice, and you can kind of see it like it both sounds like and looks like a mixture of those two characters at the same time, and you just feel you feel and see through Obi-Wan's point of view that the two are no more, but at the end of the day, Obi-Wan still believes, regardless of what Vader says, still believes deep down that Anakin's still in there because he's seen him. He's actually one of the few people ever seen under the Vader helmet. So, all right, so we really got into last week the top 5 droids and the top 5 stinkiest, grossest animal. I think, if anything, this week we should talk about the top 5 lightsaber battles, because this was definitely top tier, I would say.
I agree with
lightsaber battles. So, as far as battles with the beams of light, Cam, where you stand?
Okay, so my top 5 overall, not in any particular order, would have to be Luke versus Darth Vader on Cloud City, Anakin versus Obi-Wan on Mustafar.
Yep.
Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, which ones am I missing? I would say Ahsoka versus the what was the overseer of that
the governess or whatever on
Mando season 2.
Mando season 2,
and then this one.
Wow.
Definitely,
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be my top 5.
Wow. Keith, do you have your top 5?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna pull a little bit, not just from the live action, because I think there's some pretty good ones in the animated show, but I would say, um, Duel of Fates has to be number
Oh,
one for
yeah.
me. I mean, it was kind of the moment I got into Star Wars for real. I mean, that music, Mustafar, Anakin, and Obi-Wan for sure. Um, then I would say Ahsoka, and like, and there's a couple Darth Maul battles in
Yeah.
there with Ahsoka, and then
Yeah.
with also with Obi-Wan and Clone Wars. I think is pretty great.
Yeah.
And then this one, I would say,
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
kind of.
I mean, I think we're all going to finish with some similar lists because definitely Duel of the Fates is up there for me.
Yeah.
Definitely Darth Vader and Luke on Cloud City. Definitely for me, the emotions behind what are happening and
That 100%. That's what helps.
way into it. And so for that, a kind of an offbeat one that, I mean, mileage may vary on how people feel about this as a lightsaber fight, but because of the emotions behind it, I think it is one of the best. Is the Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul rematch from Rebels from Twin Suns. This, I think, is up there just for the creativity and, like I said, in the force power use and that final confrontation between the two of them. And I'll even say, I mean, I know, again, this is one that I think mileage varies for people, but I really like the throne room fight with Rey and Kylo in episode 8, where they kind of fight back to back.
Yeah, that
one,
was
one of the few moments you see red and
number
blue
6 on my
lightsabers,
list.
red and blue lightsabers fighting
Yeah.
for the same cause, or what they think is the same cause. I really love that moment.
Another one actually that comes to mind that I think we kind of glossed over is Yoda versus Dooku.
Yeah,
and
that's a good
and
one.
Anakin when he loses his arm. That
Yeah,
whole
That's
that
a
whole
powerful fight.
battle's pretty great. I mean,
Also, Yoda
Yoda
versus
hopping everywhere.
Sidious in episode 3, the dual fight between Sidious and
oh,
Yoda, and then Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of going on
I
at the
hate that
same
one.
time. You don't like that one?
When he threw
I
the
hate
Senate
that
at him.
one. I think yeah. That one to me is like the most cowardly thing I think I've ever seen Yoda do, and it just it didn't make sense. I didn't understand it. I don't know why things happened the way they did, and it's like it just didn't track for me at all. The emotions of it, the why, the practical, like why are we throwing donuts at each other? Like we're spinning them, we're throwing them, and we're laughing while we're doing it. Yet, and then Yoda's like, meh, and then like crawls through a little hole. Like I just
Yeah,
He definitely
didn't do
gives
it
up
for me.
quick.
I see where you're coming from. For me, it's I wouldn't say that it's. I like everything up to essentially when Yoda just seems to
Give
throw in the towel for
Give
reasons that
up.
escape me. I don't. I
He
agree.
falls a long
Yeah.
way.
He
and
falls a
hits the
long
ground.
way, and he's just like, you know what? I busted my hip. I'm 900 years old. I'm 900.
Just exile me, and I'll be cool.
I am out. But no, I totally get why that would not necessarily be. And for a similar reason, like I like the Yoda fights for the Flash, but I will say the Yoda lightsaber fights are not generally my favorites because
It's
for what I was saying earlier, that those fights for me don't hold a lot of emotional weight. Like they
That's-
kind of
what makes them think the
Yeah,
fight's more
yeah.
significant. Is
Yeah.
like it could be just people hitting lightsabers together, but when there's like weight behind it, that makes me more invested.
Yeah, and for me, number 6 on my list would probably be the rematch between Luke and Vader on the second Death Star.
That's a very good one, yeah.
Especially the moment after Luke is hiding in the shadows, refusing to fight Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Vader feels that he's like, oh, you have a sister, maybe I'll turn her instead, and Luke just comes out swinging, and the music swell behind that, and the
Yeah.
desperation of Luke to save his sister and his friends, even though he's been refusing to fight Vader this whole time, and obviously he touches the dark side a bit there, but I think it's such a great moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, for as cool as the lightsaber fight was, I mean, for me, my favorite moment of this episode was that conversation. And,
Yeah.
I do hate to say it, like, but if you've ever, looked into the eyes of a friend and, like, not recognized who's looking back at you, that's a very affecting thing. And,
Yeah.
and to even see that, and I think they were very clever. They did a similar thing to what they did in The Force Awakens with, the conflict with Ben, kind of, and using the light to
The color,
portray.
that was fantastic filmmaking right there.
And him, in a way, like I guess you can. It depends on how you read it, but it does feel almost as if Anakin, in some way, is just like, you know what, man, like, what, this isn't your fault. Even though I told you
Yeah.
I am what you made me, I'm not your failure. I did this. And it's true. Like, and I think that's important for both Obi-Wan and other people in those situations to recognize, is that when those people do things like that, and when Anakin did those things.
Anakin made a choice.
Anakin made those choices. Yeah. And Anakin went down that path. And I think as much as there's a want for him to come back, and there's moments, even in, you know, some of the comics run where Vader even thinks about what it might be like to go seek out Obi-Wan and possibly even apologize. And of course he never does, because he's gone so far down the path that if he goes back now, everything he's done is wrong.
Yeah.
And, you know, you see that kind of thinking, even not to get too real, but like in people that join cults or other organizations where they're brainwashed, and it's just like, well, if I start questioning it now, that means everything I've done up to this moment wasn't worth it or was wrong. And if I call that into question, everything gets called into question. So in the end, that red lightsaber comes up and he doubles down. He's just like, no, I will destroy you. And that's crushing. But I think this was, for me, one of the most affecting scenes. That conversation is one of the most affecting things I've seen
in Star Wars.
Yeah,
I was gonna say in the Star Wars as a whole. Like this show, that sequence was just astounding, I think, and it was something that like we haven't seen in a little bit. Like there's been intense scenes in The Mandalorian, seasons 1 and 2, not so much in Boba Fett, but this was just a very like deeply like powerful scene, I think, and you get that a lot. I think definitely in Episode 3 you get a lot of those moments, and Episode 5 and that, but this was just another one of those very poignant moments of just like, this is kind of what's the battle between good and evil, and like friendship, and like that kind of bond is very much what Star Wars is about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we wrap up things on Jabim, and then obviously we have kind of our epilogue of sorts. You know, we've already touched on Vader and his little his Zoom call with a Palpatine who's just like, come on, man, Vader, focus up. I need you. Eyes on the prize. We have a growing, rebellion in our midst. I need you to be my cudgel here. But also we have Leia, of course, getting back home to Alderaan, and I really enjoyed that. She gets to feel a bit more comfortable in her skin. After her adventure, she's back home safe.
Well, and she has a bit more of a purpose now. She's kind of
right.
she's joined the rebellion at this point, and she's like, she kind of knows. She's more on. I think she knows and appreciates more of what Bail Organa's been doing.
Yeah.
She's kind of like he's been kind of doing this, and not like I've been a kid and not been realizing what's been going on, and now she's aware of what's going on around her.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't see the mischievous. That's misplaced. It's like she still has that Leia where she's going to do what she wants, but she kind of knows like what the point is now. Like
she's focused. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought also another great performance of hers. Like she took a little bit more of a backseat in the last kind of back half, but I thought again that was okay. It was a good handoff. She got to a great point and learned a lot in her character, and felt like she settled into somebody that really could showcase Obi-Wan's journey, but also look to the future in the best way. I wonder if we'll see the next age of Leia at some point later on in one of these shows. Maybe she'll come up, and I hope it's some big shoes to fill now for Leia, the young Leia. So
I agree.
We'll see what happens there. But I also think it was really interesting with the whole Alderaan thing, and just to see the moment of Obi-Wan coming off that that ship and her lighting up and being so excited. I thought, talk about like blowing past Obi-Wan though, when she goes right to Lola.
I thought of that too.
That's harsh. Like
that's kids though, right? It's just like, hey, I'm back. It's just like, great. Did you get me anything? Like, I can absolutely see that.
One thing I liked about that moment, there's the classic Obi-Wan arms folding that he does a lot throughout 1, 2, and 3, and I was like, that it was those small little subtleties that I was like, this was Star Wars. Like it brought me back to those moments.
Right. And overall I really enjoyed the performance of Vivian Lyra Blair, the actress that played Leia here, and I really enjoyed that we got to spend this time with this character, and I do feel like Leia so often kind of gets pushed to the side. It's like, she's doing politics. But I think it's, she's one half of the twins that saved the galaxy. And, obviously she, to to think about what Leia's been through just as much as, if not more so than the other characters, and she never leaves the fight.
Yeah.
She always stays resolute, and Luke even tells her at one point, I think in Return of the Jedi, like, if I go, it's all it's up to you to do this, and she takes that to heart, and throughout, fights the good fight and never runs away from it, and for her, she's a great character, and I'm glad we got to see her a bit younger and see where she got that inspiration. And
then it
really
it gives more to her character, I think, in episode 4, and then beyond that, just how dedicated she is. Because I mean, she's been in this fight since this age now.
Yeah,
and it's like much longer than Luke, Han, or anyone else that she meets in those movies. She's been in it since she's been a kid.
Yeah,
and has been as devoted and like believes in that purpose.
Yeah,
and like that it's a good thing that they're doing.
Yeah, Andor will still shout in her face, "I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old." He's always trying to get in the number game. But I also enjoyed quite a bit, the moment between her and the goodbye between her and Obi-Wan, where he's like, I wish I could say more. But it's not, I do know your parents, and you're very much like them in the best ways. You carry on the best parts of both of your parents, and I felt that throughout. He kept bringing up kind of like, "Oh, you remind me so much of your mother. Your mother, she reminds me of her mother." But I got very strong young Anakin vibes from Leia as well.
He
throughout.
did say that she got pieces from her
of
father,
course, yeah.
Which was I appreciate that, because like as much as she is Padme's daughter, she's also Anakin's, and there's the good part of Anakin that I think he gave to Luke and Leia.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we wrap up things on Alderaan, and Obi-Wan of course heads back home. He goes to Tatooine, packs up the old cave, and he's not really in desert garb anymore. He's kind of got like pseudo Jedi robes.
Very episode 4 Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
He's rocking the sleeveless robe, which I appreciate. It's a good look for him.
Bale paid him a little on the side, was like, "Hey, thanks for saving my daughter. Here's some credits.
Buy yourself something that doesn't stink, that doesn't smell like dead manta ray." No, and this outfit too is something that he's been featured in the Marvel run from when Luke is reading stories from his journal that he's left behind. In fact, the cover of Star Wars 15 is Obi-Wan wearing this exact same getup.
Wow, okay.
Meaning that those stories take place after that, which makes sense because if you've read them, Obi-Wan is not the Obi-Wan we meet at the beginning of this. He's very much like, hey, I'm fighting. He's back to fighting the good fight. So it seems to be this series takes him up to that moment. And if you do want to see if there's no season 2 of this show, which who knows at this point, we'll get into that question later. If you want to know more about where Obi-Wan goes from here, there's a couple issues in the Star Wars Marvel run from 2015, I believe, that you can check out. But he goes to visit, Owen and Beru, and checks in on Luke, and we kind of get a little moment between he and the two dads, essentially of Luke Skywalker. There's a really great moment where Owen asks him if he wants to. Hey, you wanna meet him? And he brings over that T-16, and Keith, you want to take it from there? What do we get?
the greatest 2 words in Star Wars history. Hello there. To me, it was the way this was done was kind of, again, par for the course for this episode, of just like effortless. It just felt like it just handed it off so nicely, and it was like they didn't. The moment was important, but it was executed in a way that made us so happy.
Yeah,
and I think that's just. That's all you can ask for in a show like this. It's like that it remembers its origins well, but you learn something new and have fun along the ride. And that was I remember audibly laughing and smiling when he said that, and just it brings it all together in a nice kind of holistic way, which is tough, really, really tough to earn and do. And so hats off again.
Yeah, and
everyone.
And we talked about it in the first episode, but I really love that Luke got that toy from Obi-Wan, especially because he ends up getting his own T-16 Skyhopper ship that he flies himself, which he says on A New Hope, like, hey, I was flying that thing from Beggar's Canyon blasting womp rats. They're not much bigger than 3 meters. So Obi-Wan gave Luke the inspiration to get the ship to do the training to blow up the Death Star.
It's been Obi-Wan the whole time.
It's all connected. Listen, it's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one kind of made a big note that not note, but just kind of observation that I made with this episode and this whole show really particular. It's interesting how, I feel like the first 3 episodes, it's the Sith doing the deceiving and deception and the light being fooled. And then it becomes the Jedi doing the deceiving and deception and the dark side being fooled.
Sure.
And this is kind of how this is the origins of the light kind of learning how to do that and the challenges that come with that. And the kind of crux of it all is Obi-Wan and Anakin and Obi-Wan struggling to keep the secret really safe and the challenges that incurs, and to kind of have that middle, like that fulcrum of the whole universe be kind of executed in this way, I thought was quite a big task, but really, really, really well done.
Yeah, it does seem like this is
overall.
This does seem like it's quite literally the turning point in some ways of the Empire, in that they've had 10 years of uncontested power. Vader's been just out there running through people and destroying, systems of power, and the galaxy is his and Palpatine's plaything. And now what you start to see in this era with Obi-Wan coming back on the board, or even, what happens in Solo with the starting of and funding of Enfys Nest and the beginning of the rebellion there, another faction that could be relevant in Andor. And this really does seem to be the point where they start to fight back against that power. And I think this is one of my favorite eras of Star Wars.
I think so.
I would definitely agree with that. And the hope has been lit, basically. I think that's really what it comes down to. And of course, there's the moment at the end that I got the number one thing on my Christmas list, Rob. I think that comes up right next, if I'm not mistaken.
Lead us into it.
I was wondering if it would happen, and then the way in which it did, I was like, it was just giddy. I mean, the fact that Qui-Gon showed up at the end, it was just like, where you been, dude? Like, let's, like, we gotta go. Like,
got stuff to do.
It was.
Well, I love the line.
It was just
I've been here the whole time. You just couldn't see me.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't focused or in the right situation to bring forth Qui-Gon.
He wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
I think it was rewarding in that sense, because if he had been it throughout the entire thing trying to guide him, this moment felt very deserving, kind of like Obi-Wan's been like, Master Yoda said Qui-Gon is back and I've not spoken to him. Where is he? And it's kind of, he had to go through this journey again to rediscover who he has to be now. Because if you think about where he is in the beginning of the series, he's very kind of purposeless.
Yeah.
He's doing a monotonous thing. He's basically biding time until Luke is old enough to train. And if he's even disinterested in that. He's kind of like, when he's talking to Bail, it's like, this is my responsibility. He's kind of like, I don't really want to do this, but this is what I have to do.
He kind of uses it like an excuse or a crutch
100%.
of just like, I can't get involved. I've got this other thing I'm supposed to be doing. But he's not really doing much with that either. Yeah.
Because Owen doesn't. Because Owen's not letting him. So he's kind of he's looking for a place. And now I think with the seeing the rebellion being formed and that, he's like, okay, this is something I can get on board with and help with.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Qui-Gon was like, now I can teach you things because you're back.
I think even in that quick moment, like, you just get the sense of like how, and this is a Liam Neeson thing, I think, really, in the writing. It's like Obi and Qui-Gon fall right back into their old ways of Qui-Gon being like, you don't know anything, dude. And being like, but and the just the tone at which they talk to each other, it's just like two friends back at it again. And Qui-Gon is always challenging him to go beyond what's right in front of his face and see the bigger picture, and maybe play a little outside the rules, in the sense that things can always be different. And Qui-Gon has always had such a vision of the possibility, whereas Obi-Wan is more of the tactile and practical, the general, the how do we solve the problem in front of us. And it was a great moment. And I also was kind of, not gonna lie, a little happy at all the naysayers who said it wasn't going to happen, and then it did. So that made me kind of like, my hope was restored a little bit. So
no, I agree with you both. This really did feel,
it was great.
Yeah, this was a great moment. I was a little worried it might not happen, and in that moment, I realized it was happening, and I was kind of like, "Oh, right!" Like this whole thing.
By
like,
that point, I was like, "Oh, wait, we forgot something," and it was like,
right. But I'm glad it happened here because I think there was a moment earlier where I'm kind of like, "Oh, this feels like this is where Qui-Gon would show up," and he didn't, and I was kind of like, "Oh, maybe he won't," but when he came up, I'm like, I'm glad this is how this unfolded because it also meant that Obi-Wan had to find that strength and that inspiration and that hope within himself, and it wasn't like a Deus Ex Machina moment, and which is I think happens throughout Star Wars. Even when Luke goes to confront Vader and Obi-Wan and Yoda are like, we can't help you there.
Interfere.
You have to do this yourself. And I think that's an important thing for, people to realize that, sometimes you will have to find that within yourself, that hope within yourself. And I think that was Obi-Wan's journey throughout this series is, being hopeless. And even, when they first land, not on Dayu, but the second planet, which the Griffith Park, Calabasas, you know what I'm talking about. Maposa, yes. Yeah. When they're there and he's telling
Leia,
Mapuzo. There we go. Yeah. We got there. But when he tells Leia, like he's borderline yelling at her, like, Leia, you don't understand. Like, people are not all good. And then like that definitely seems to be, I don't necessarily want to say his lowest moment. I'm sure he's been lower, but it shows you that he's completely lost faith in people, and the back half of the show is him seeing that there are good people out there still willing to fight for this, and that inspires him to be like, oh yeah, like why am I any different? Like these people need me, I need them, I need to help the future, and it will take care of itself. And he's not so hopeless by the end of it. And to tie that all together with this Qui-Gon moment, I just really appreciated that. I think he could have come in earlier. I think this was good here, not only because like, oh, hey, it gives him, if they want to play around with the season 2, this gives you a tease of what he could possibly be doing, but it allowed him to be the reason he won rather than Qui-Gon stepping in and being like, come on, you can do it, champ. Like he had to reach within himself and find that.
Yeah.
Which
now,
I really like.
You did you said a season 2. How do we want to talk about that at all?
I think we have to.
I was gonna say, so yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
Keith, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings on a season 2? Where are you at with this after the close here?
It is tough. It is kind of like, when you make a batch of cookies and you make like a really good batch of cookies, and then you're like, oh man, maybe I should try and make that again. But then at the same time, it's like, do you really need another dozen cookies? It's like, are they going to come out as good? I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It feels like the Disney thing to do would be to make another season, but probably the better thing to do would be to not. And it's going to take, if this season was hard to pull off, which we all know it was, and it had its ups and downs, season 2 was going to be even harder.
Without rehashing things that have already been done. Yeah.
Right. I think there is such an art into ending things well, and so many shows fail at it, and they just succeeded in such a way that if I were like Deborah Chow, like I'd be like, let me walk away in peace,
Yeah.
Like, let me just kind of, and then maybe she will and maybe she won't. That's really up to them. But I think they did great work, and I think there's value in saying we did a great job, and that's good enough.
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of that. In that, I think while the show wasn't perfect, I think overall it's a huge net positive, and a great addition to the story. And I agree that I think Disney will have to fight its inclination to try to go back to this well and try to get a second season out of it. I could absolutely see them doing it. I would be very nervous about another season of this. And that's not to say that there aren't stories to tell, but they hit on so much of the big moments that I would want from an Obi-Wan edition that I don't know. I struggle to think of what they could put in a season 2 that would match the highs of this. So my inclination is to just say, don't do it. It's great as it is. There's certainly like, you could have, Obi-Wan, trying to do good deeds on Tatooine or something, but then that just feels like Book of Obi-Wan, like
And
that's
we know how the book shows go.
right. I don't need to see him off doing more missions. Just like let it kind of be as it is. We can fill in the blanks. I know there are books out there. People want to see more or read more about
There's content.
Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon. I know there are books out there. I'm sorry, I don't know the titles of them, but Google exists where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon have those heart-to-heart moments about like what happened with Anakin, and I think Disney has been really good about letting those moments exist where they already are rather than trying to retread them for live action. And I think that's the right call, especially for people who are fans of those works. But yeah, I think that they've left this off in a great place. It's a limited series. I think they accomplished their mission. Let it be.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like it's hard for me to agree because like at one point I'm like I want to see more of Obi-Wan because this was so good, but then it's also like let this be good. Like it doesn't need. I already know what happens now, and it's kind of it's set up Obi-Wan to be like, okay, this is a good place for me to think about where Obi-Wan, what he was doing in that time between episode 3 and 4. I'm scared though because there were certain lines that were dropped in the show that were like, because there was a line when Obi-Wan on Alderaan was like, "Well, if you ever need me again, you know where to find me." And
I assume that was
trying to be like a throw to the hologram message that Leia sends. I hope that's what it is, but it's very much a big studio like Disney to be like, well, this was successful, then we have to do another one.
Right.
I'm just like, as like you were saying, I don't know what material they were drawn because they've used the material. They can't really make Vader and Obi-Wan fight again because I feel like that would just be you can't. It'd be very hard to top that fight we just saw.
Yeah.
And I don't think it needs to be topped. I think it needs to kind of sit where it is, and that's Obi-Wan can be a one show and done. Like it's good enough to be that for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think there's a prestige to just doing this 6-part show, and like when this show is at its best, it feels like a movie. It feels like the movies.
Yeah.
And to do a season 2, I feel like dilutes that a little bit.
Agreed.
And you could say, oh, they could bring back Hayden, and they could do again first name basis, like as we always say.
Of course.
we could do the stories of Vader going off and decimating planets, or the Inquisitors, or whatever you want. But I think there's so many other mediums for that that do so much better. At the end of the day, the live action stuff I feel like is the trunk of the tree in the best way, and you try to put too much on it, and it's just going to become its best form. So we'll see what they do. I think they have enough Star Wars series in the pipe to like keep everyone occupied and working.
True. True.
Hopefully those series learn from this and from the not so great series, and choose to make great shows. So
yeah. All right. Well, I mean that covers pretty much everything that happened in the episode. Does anybody have any last closing thoughts on the series of Obi-Wan Kenobi?
My only this is a small gripe, and it was in this last episode. I wish Vader had taken his TIE fighter instead of an.
Oh my gosh! You know what? I have that here in my notes too.
I was like,
this
is the moment for him to just be like in his ship flying there. Like,
I love that TIE Advanced fighter. It's such a cool design.
Just take it because it's also an Anakin thing to do. Like, I'm taking my ship and I'm gonna go do this instead of like get me on my shuttle. And then, like, who's driving? Where were they? Were they just chilling, watching the fight? Like, was he driving the shuttle?
Yeah.
Just little, tiny things,
Yeah, I do wonder if he, like, limped back up there, and the pilot's just like, well, I don't want to talk about it.
What do I do?
Like, just take me back to the destroyer. I don't want to talk about it. No, I totally agree. That was a nitpick I had, is that I wish we got to see his personal fighter. That's such a cool ship.
Yeah, but other than that.
Yeah, and there was a missed opportunity for Obi-Wan's like, I hate flying. Yeah. Like I was waiting for that with that ship. And the one thing I was also surprised at, we never got a bad feeling about this.
Oh,
which I was like, of all things, man, like I guess this really isn't the movies, right? It's the show.
That's very true.
Very small nitpick. Rob, what about you?
That was my nitpick about that was my big one that I was like, oh, right, yeah. As soon as he was just like, give me my ship, I was like, oh, hell yeah. And then it's just a Lambda shuttle. I'm like, I mean, fine, I get it. But I don't have too many other nitpicks about this episode in particular. I do wish, kind of like we'd mentioned earlier, maybe we had gotten a bit more of Reva's backstory. I think I can see why, especially with a limited series, you're just like, well, we don't really have time for a whole episode on Reva, but I think that would have done a bit more to set up her ultimate, her storyline ultimately. And I know some people struggled with where they were at with that character. I think my biggest nitpick overall is the Inquisitors, and I wish they had.
Yeah. I would say heavily underutilized
on this show. I mean,
because if they were gonna give us this much of Reva, but also not enough of Reva, like give us more Inquisitors then. Do less with Reva, and then give us just more Inquisitors on that front.
Yeah, the fourth sister was in there, just kind of hanging out. Fifth brother was there, just kind of throwing shade, and especially early on, just being like, why are you being so aggressive? And it's like, if you see what this guy does whenever he shows up, like he's got no place to be asking why other people are being aggro in certain situations. Like, this dude is grade A asshole. So I do wish, and it's always going to be tough, because when you hold up the Inquisitors next to Vader, like they just know they're not even close. And that's the ultimate what we wanted to see here. I wish maybe Obi-Wan or somebody had maybe had a little bit of a tussle with one as sort of like a warm-up fight or something. Another thing that I wish they kind of set this up, and I touched on this on our episode with Dinks a little bit. I know he felt very strongly like, oh, we'll see Quinlan Vos in Andor somewhere else. I really think that this could have been a cool opportunity to see that character and have him get involved with busting Leia out. But again, I understand why they wanted this to just, listen, this is about Obi-Wan. Let's focus on Obi-Wan. I get it. And
I'm still questioning Quinlan Voss's existence now, because I think that was his lightsaber.
Yeah,
he could have just walked away. That I think maybe he's down, but I could also see it like he was just like, I'm walking away from the life.
Yeah,
I'm out. Could be.
I'm excited to see if something comes of that.
Maybe we'll find out.
I wonder if Reva's lightsaber is going to go in the box with all the other lightsabers.
It's what Maz picks it up. She picks it up.
Yeah, Maz has got it rummaging around in the basement of her castle. But of course, that's a story for another time. Well, yeah, I mean, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you to everybody who's been listening along and watching along with us and tuning in week to week with us. Yeah. It's been so much fun to talk with you guys. Keith, thank you so much for having us on here. Cam, thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, guys, I really can't say how much I've had fun being on the show here with you guys and creating this with you. Let's just say, even though Obi-Wan might not get a season 2, I think there'll be a season 2 of the Bacta podcast real soon. So thank you everyone again for watching and subscribing. And we just went like super viral on TikTok randomly. So thank you
great.
for that.
Check us out there. Check us out on TikTok. I will give a quick shout out. If you want to see more of what Cam and I are up to, people listening to Heard the Nerds, we are on another podcast called Anime Shun, which is anime as in like the Japanese animation, anime shun, SHUN.
Yep.
Check us out. We are on all podcast formats, and if you want to just that bridge between anime and Star Wars, we did an episode on Star Wars Visions, which was a lot of fun and we all really enjoyed.
And we'll be doing probably season 2 of Visions, which I'm sure
I cannot wait for. I really loved season 1. Very excited for season 2. So this has been great. Everybody, thank you all for being here, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.